John Brzenk has a secret technique that almost no one knows about. This technique is totally overpowered, and it all has to do with the setup. The setup is the portion of the match that is just before the go. It is when you and your opponent take a grip. The type of grip you get can heavily impact the result of the match as well as the lane the match takes place in. Certain kinds of grips and setups lend themselves more toward one technique over another. There are so many factors that go into the setup, it would be impossible to do a comprehensive study of every aspect in the time we have here. But what I want to focus on today is just one aspect of the setup, and that is capping. If you don't know what capping is wrapping your fingers around your thumb when taking a grip. It would be similar to a hook grip in a deadlift. On the other side, not capping is simply not wrapping your fingers around your thumb. But is it better to cap your thumb or to not cap your thumb? Why do so many high-level arm wrestlers differ in this technique? Here we see a match between Devin Larratt and Matt Mask. Both guys have a very similar build and hand size, yet in the setup we can see that Devin is capping but Matt Mask is not capping. So it doesn't seem to be solely based around technique or hand size. But why does Devin Larratt cap his thumb in the first place? Here we see a great example of this in Devin's match versus Michael Todd. We can see that as Devin and Michael close their hands, Devin's webbing height is much higher than Michael's. We can see that Devin's thumb is parallel with his index finger, whereas Michael's thumb is much higher than his index finger. This indicates that the median height of Devin's hand is higher overall than Michael's. Additionally, this means that Devin is balling his hand up more than Michael's, effectively making it thicker and thus creating more torque on Michael's wrist. So why would you ever not cap? It seems to just be a straight up advantage, right? We do have to recognize firstly that some arm wrestlers have really thick hands and short fingers, making it impossible for them to cap or at least very uncomfortable. However, there is a more important reason that not everyone should necessarily cap their thumb. There is actually a secret technique that is even more advantageous than capping. Behold, the John Brzenk grip. Here we see John taking a grip against Pavlo. He does not cap his thumb when he takes a grip, but he doesn't take a normal grip either. Notice how John's thumb is actually pretty even with his index finger, yet he doesn't cover his thumb with his index finger like Devin does. And this is very intentional. In this moment right here, take a look at Pavlo's thumb knuckle. If John were to move his index finger up and over the top of his thumb, he would be covering Pavlo's knuckle, making the grip illegal. Instead, John wraps his index finger over the top of his middle finger, lowering the height of his index finger, thus allowing him to have extremely high webbing while also not covering Pavlo's knuckle. Immediately off the go, we see how effective this setup is as John easily takes Pavlo's wrist. And just looking at the position these guys are in, it looks like John's hand overall is much higher. And that's because it is. If John had capped his thumb like Devin does, he would have covered Pavlo's knuckle, making this grip illegal, and he would have had to lower the height of his webbing. But if John had simply closed his thumb over the top of his hand like Michael does, his webbing would be super low. Instead, John combines the two grips, eliminating the negative aspects of each and getting the best of both worlds in the process. This grip allows John to ball up his hand, effectively making it even thicker than it already is, and making the median height of his hand far higher than it would have been. This makes it way harder for John's opponent to cup his wrist in or contain John's top roll. Combining this with John's already insane back pressure and pronation, John's top roll is totally overpowered. But wait, there's more. The grip John takes against Pavlo is already ridiculous, but there is a whole other level John can take this grip to if he wants. Here we see John versus Oleg Petrenko at East vs West 5. Notice in this match, pretty much the only thing John cared about was cracking Oleg's wrist back. He knew that this was his win condition as Oleg's arm power is insane. And as the camera angle changes right now, we get a view of the grip John took. This time, John's hand is even more balled up than it was against Pavlo. Notice how John is pushing his index finger down with his thumb, which allows him to get his webbing height higher and still not cover Oleg's thumb knuckle. But it doesn't stop there. This time, John is also covering his middle finger with his ring finger. John is contorting his hand in a way that makes it as fat as humanly possible. John is not worried about finger coverage around the back of Oleg's hand. He is only worried about making it as difficult and awkward as possible for Oleg to cup his wrist. We continue to see this special grip from John all throughout this match. Even though John is often losing his own wrist, his opponent is losing his wrist worse than he is. And John's technique is pretty much always better than his opponent, so as long as the match stops at all, he will probably win via technical adjustment. I think this grip shown here by John may be the very best grip you can use if your main goal is to attack your opponent's cupping. So if this grip is so effective, why doesn't everyone use it? Although this grip isn't very common, some people actually do use it. Here we see Jason from the Table Monkeys explaining how he incorporates the John Brzenk grip into his game.
So what I can do is I can take this pinky or this finger and pull it down so it's on top of the other finger. If you watch Brzenk highlight videos, you're gonna see Brzenk take this setup a lot. Thumb uncovered, and he's pushing his index finger down into his middle finger. And it leaves this knuckle exposed. As far as the ref is concerned, his knuckle's showing absolutely fine, but my first knuckle is way higher than his first knuckle, and I feel like all my fingers are controlling this one part of his hand.
But besides these guys, I haven't really seen anyone else using this grip exactly like John. It is entirely possible that a lot of people have used this grip and I just haven't noticed it since I wasn't looking for it. Let me know if you guys think of anyone else who uses the exact same setup that we see from John. So when would it be a good idea to use this kind of grip? This grip is definitely not an all-around grip. While it is insanely effective against certain techniques, it is terrible against other techniques. But in general, if you are going up against an opponent whose win condition is to bend their wrist, the John Brzenk grip is going to work perfectly. This grip is designed to give you as much access as possible to attack your opponent's wrist and finger flexion. It will cause your pronation and back pressure to be more effective than it would have been with a standard grip. However, if your goal in a match is to bend your own wrist, this grip would be horrible. It would probably be the very worst grip you could possibly use. When you ball up your hand like this, it doesn't only make it difficult for your opponent to cup, it also makes it difficult for you to cup. So if you're a puller that likes to force your opponent into a hook, this grip is not going to help you that much. It is definitely a trade-off. The grip can also be used in a top roll versus top roll battle, but understand that you are increasing the likelihood of both you and your opponent losing your wrist. So if you are good at fighting from that awkward position like John is, this grip might work really well for you in a top roll battle as well. But preventing a hook is where this grip really shines. Overall, there is not one grip in arm wrestling that is definitely better than another. This is because every different grip is used for a different purpose. The John Brzenk grip isn't the end-all be-all setup, it is simply another tool to add to your toolbox. If you find yourself going up against a hook puller whose only care in the world is to get his wrist bent, that's the time to pull this move out. What we looked at today is yet another example of the depth of John's understanding of arm wrestling. What's crazy to me is that we don't see more people copying this setup. Maybe as time goes on, this will begin to change.